Welcome to Spinistry Chat, where we discuss everything and anything related to gravel and adventure cycling, bikepacking, and ultra endurance mountain biking. Basically, we're here for those who are into things long, hard, and dirty. This is a slightly new format for us, so please bear with us as we shake out the cobwebs. This is a direct result from our survey on the front end. A lot of the responses we got back from the survey definitely identified some gaps that need to be cared for from the adventure cycling and bikepacking and gravel things. And they're things we think we can care for some ourselves and help along that. I'm quite certain that anyone that listens to this podcast will be able to come up with some ideas of their own. But there's some fundamental stuff that we want to touch on just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Gravel and adventure cycling, bikepacking, ultra endurance mountain biking. There's some fundamental stuff in the mix that we want to make sure everyone's on the same page. I think of these as gravel and bikepacking minimum capabilities, at least from a Spinistry perspective. That's one of the beautiful things about gravel and adventure cycling. There's a gazillion ways to do this. None of them are wrong. None of them are right. What I'm presenting is the way we put our events and get-togethers together. This is some basic stuff to be cognizant of. First off, be flexible. These are adventure rides. By our definition, it's not an adventure until something goes wrong. You have to be fit enough and knowledgeable enough to overcome adversity. And quite frankly, we are not ride nannies. These are not fully supported, spoon-fed, fully catered, fully pampered rides that cost thousands of dollars. Spinistry adventures range from free to extremely low cost, and you're going to get much more than your money's worth from them. That's our ultimate goal. Another thing that's really important, you have to already have established some basic fitness. These are not intended to be beginner rides to try out your first century or 100-miler if you've never ridden anything of that distance. Same applies for our shorter routes. You need to be at least basically trained up to do 3 to 4 hours at a continuous endurance pace. As your fitness increases, that 3 to 4 hours will become a longer and longer distance for you. You need to have basic mechanical ability, or at least have a dedicated partner to help you with those basic mechanical shortfalls. And if you have that partner with you, they need to be aware of their role. They need to be aware of your capabilities. Don't just tag along with somebody with the assumption, if I have a mechanical, this person will help me out. Make sure they're up to speed on what you're capable of, or more importantly, not capable of. Seriously though, you really need to know how to fix a flat tire, and you need to have all the tools to do that for your bicycle. Everybody's bike setup is different, so I can't tell you exactly what those are at the moment. It's also highly recommended that you understand some basic maintenance, even converting a bike to single speed if you need to. So you need to know how to break a chain and put it back together. That's basic level, but we also understand that not everyone is there yet. If you don't have those capabilities, don't plan to go out on one of our routes self-supported. Have somebody tag along with you, but don't expect us to be there to care for you, because it's just physically not possible. It's recommended that you be aware of basic outdoors, rural etiquette and principles, kind of the rules of the road, so to speak, about being an outdoors person. The reality is, particularly on our gravel rides, things are different out in the country as opposed to in the suburbs or the big city when you're riding in traffic. Just be neighborly. Most of the time, everyone's going to be neighborly to you as well, but also be aware. If you're out in the middle of nowhere on a dirt or gravel road, riding 3 abreast across the road, and everybody has earbuds in their ears, you may have been holding up somebody trying to go feed their cattle. Always be aware of your surroundings. Know how to use your navigation tools ahead of time. Don't try to figure that out when you're starting on your ride. Know how to work those tools. Learn and understand your tools in advance. You want to carry everything you need to go the full distance, or at least to a location with known multiple amenities available. that you're confident in. If you're going to that crossroads with just one general store showing on the map, that store may have gone out of business 10 years ago, or they may have extremely limited hours, particularly if it's a Sunday. We generally recommend carry everything on your bike that you need to go the full distance, because you never know what might go wrong along the way. Rolls into, you got to be comfortable being outside of cell coverage if you're going to do these type of rides and events. Our routes often go into backcountry areas with zero cell coverage. Also keep in mind that when you're in those no cell phone coverage areas, your cell phone batteries, if they're looking for a cell tower the whole time, you're going to chew up batteries more quickly. We recommend having a plan in place on how to keep your devices charged up, particularly if you're going out for over 4 to 6 hours. Once you start getting in that 5 to 6 hour range, you can drain devices quickly. And hey, we're rolling back around to be flexible. These are adventure rides. By our definition, it's not an adventure until something goes wrong. Keep that in mind. If you are uncomfortable with that concept, our rides, routes, and events probably are not a good fit for you. Please verify all those basic levels of detail before you go out on any adventures that we organize or any other event promoters that are out there, organizations that are out there. Be up to speed of what is actually provided. Don't just assume. Again, that's the beauty of gravel and adventure cycling, ultra endurance stuff. Every ride is different. Every event is different. Every promoter goes about it a different way. Even on our Spinistry rides and events, they're completely different from one week to the next. We do that on purpose. Everybody's looking for a different experience. We don't expect anyone to do everything we do. We try to meet what folks are looking for, no matter what their preferences or skill levels might be. Some of our events cater to different audiences. There's no standard for these types of rides, so verify all of the details. If you're not 100% comfortable in being 100% self-supported for 150% or more of the planned distance. Ultimately, we hope to get everyone to that level where you're 100% comfortable in your abilities and knowledge base, where you can go 50% beyond and still be comfortable. Does that make sense? Now, we're going to be offering ways to help people bridge those skills and knowledge gaps. Stick around for some more information on how we plan to help with those. But I just want to make it clear, you don't have to already be at those high levels to go out and enjoy. You don't have to be superhuman like Wonder Woman or Shazam or something like that. You don't need to be Grizzly Adams and an outdoors survivalist or anything like that. And you don't have to be MacGyver. Most everyone's somewhere in that middle range, and we want to help you get those middle skills and experience levels to a higher level to make you a stronger and more prepared rider. The reality is it just isn't viable for us to host true beginner rides and clinics. Realistically, every beginner is coming from a different level of beginner. You need to sort out for yourself what it takes for you to build up those basic skills and that knowledge base. We're happy to help with that. Going forward, we will be posting videos and podcasts that will help with basic skill building and even higher than basic. We welcome your feedback on where to start with that content. We encourage folks to search out events and organizations who specialize in those beginner events and get-togethers. If that's what you're needing, there's people providing that. Whenever they come to our attention, we will share that information. We just don't have the bandwidth, manpower, or resources to care for a true beginner clinic. Maybe somewhere down the road, we will be able to help more along those lines. It's just not something that's in our quiver at the moment. Each month, we're going to be hosting in-person events that give riders of almost every skill level the opportunity to build their experience and knowledge basics. These gatherings are meant to be completely inclusive. They're going to lean heavily on group mentorship and basically crowdsourced educational opportunities. We expect the people that do have more experience and skills to share that knowledge with people that are coming up. Now, please keep in mind that we all learn along the way from every trip we set out upon and the obstacles we overcome during those trips. We just never stop learning. After the survey results, we will go in depth on the format of an upcoming get together that we have planned to better illustrate that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of those survey results. The survey itself was down and dirty. It was quick, fairly high level, but trying to find those universal things. We did have one open-ended question at the end to get random feedback. That was enlightening. We'll touch on some of those responses that help us define where we're going forward and why we're putting this content together and the way we're going to structure some of our events. I really want to start with question one. This was extremely exciting to me. This was a big deal, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth shortly. Here's the question. How likely are you to go bikepacking between now and the end of the year? And the response options were very likely, somewhat likely, unlikely, and the actual response rate was 49.61%. Let's call that 50%, very likely, 43.31%, somewhat likely, 6.30% unlikely, and not a chance. There was one random response. This is super exciting for me, and let me explain why. Basically, for lack of a better term, the very likely and the unlikely ratios have flip-flopped in the past couple years. A lot of people are going to go, Kevin, this is people that were filling out a survey for bikepacking, so obviously they're bikepackers. That hasn't been the case for the past few years. There was definitely an interest in bikepacking, and people were getting up to speed on it, building some knowledge or getting familiar with it. A lot of folks weren't actually doing it. It was probably in the 10 to 20% range when we did this survey a while back. And most people were unlikely to do a bikepacking trip in the next several months. The somewhat likely, the middle ground, that's probably pretty close. It's probably always been in that 40 to 50% range. But that flip-flop from unlikely to very likely, that's really interesting. That's really exciting. I think we've bridged that gap from curiosity to actually going out and doing it. I think that's a big step in the community, and I'm very excited to see this. The next question, which months of the year are you most likely to go bikepacking? And this is a select all that apply. People didn't have to choose just one month. Basically, we were looking for which months they don't want to go bikepacking. This is definitely going to be a Texas-centric response crowd. So the responses will coincide with Texas weather, generally speaking. I'm sure there's a few outliers. 84% of the respondents said October is their ideal month to go bikepacking, or one of their favorite months to go bikepacking. That's the biggest one by far. So October is the number one month. Hey, it's in October. That's an excellent opportunity for just about every level of bikepacking, adventure cycling, multi-day skill set that people might be looking for. So keep that in mind. We got October covered for you. April was a very popular month. November was strong. March is strong. May is strong. And guess what? Starting in June, it starts trailing off very quickly. June, some people are still interested. July, it's going down. August, down. Comes back in September, fairly strong. January is super low. Looks like January is the lowest month. And February and December are both fairly low as well. This is more confirmation than anything. It confirms that we don't want to focus on bikepacking and multi-day events in Texas in July and August. We plan to spend those months in Colorado, but that doesn't mean we won't have anything in the mix. We've done it in the past. There's some creative ways to go about it. Depending on how our schedule works out, we may try throwing in what we call our AC adventures again. We'll talk about that down the road if it's applicable, but there are ways you can make it work in the heat of summer. We'll just leave it at that, even in Texas. The next question, how many nights do you prefer to camp or overnight when bikepacking? And I'll be honest with you, after I got these responses, I need some clarification from y'all on that. So please do leave it in the comments, send us an email. When we're hanging out at an event afterwards, having some beer or barbecue or whatever, sitting around the campfire or whatever, let's chat about it. I do need some clarification on this, but let's go over the results first. The options were 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights, or other. 2 nights is by far the largest response rate, 48%. 1 night, 24%. So overnight trips make sense for a lot of people. 3 nights was fairly low, 11.81%. And then the other one, I think it's a lot of people that didn't, well, I guess 19 said other, but I glanced at those responses and I don't think they read the question properly. We'll just leave it at that. Nobody said, oh, I like to overnight for 20 days on end. We all recognize there are big trips that may go on for 5, 10, 20 days, maybe even longer. But generally speaking, most people are looking at a weekend's adventure of some sort. Now, here's where I need clarification. I see a little bit of misalignment in other anecdotal feedback I've received over the years. The response here is most people are looking for 2 nights of camping, 2 overnights when they're on a bike packing or multi-day trip. I need clarification on how that structure looks. Let me explain why. When we've tried to put stuff together in the past, it usually makes sense to try to do a 3-day weekend out of it. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or something like that. Most of the time when we've tried to do that in the past, the feedback is almost always, I need to knock it out on the weekend. I can't get off work or whatever else. The way I look at it, that's a 1 night overnight. Park somewhere, take off Saturday morning, camp Saturday night, return to that spot somehow Sunday. If people are saying, hey, I want to get there Friday night and camp and then roll out, and that makes it 2 nights, okay. I didn't think that was the way most people look, but if that's what people are responding here, let me know that. Or is it that people are willing to do a 3-day weekend? I do want some clarification on that, please, so we know which direction to go to start putting stuff together. And if you are interested in the 3-day weekend, do you prefer Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday? When you go bike packing or multi-day riding, how many hours of riding do you try for each day on a bike packing trip? The options were 4 hours a day or less, under 8 hours a day, but more than 4 hours a day, more than 8 hours a day, and then other. Without a doubt, 71.65% of the respondents chose under 8 hours, but above 4 hours. So what that tells us is to try to structure rides based on 6 hours of riding a day, roughly. We recognize that there are different people with different capabilities and fitness levels. 6 hours at 10 miles an hour is 60 miles. 6 hours at 20 miles an hour is 120 miles. The idea is for us to build different riding options, different loops, different routes based on those types of different levels of capability, based on an average speed, roughly speaking. But again, it's not a black and white thing. It's shades of gray and it's going to adjust. But look at it from that perspective when choosing your route. We don't recommend choosing the 100-mile-a-day route if you only average 10 miles an hour. That doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for something to go wrong. You may overdo things where you're not up to riding on day 2, for example. But that's a very basic outline of how we'll be looking at doing some of the structure going forward on these events. And then our question 5, that's an open question. How could we be most helpful for your bike packing adventures? And I'm just going to touch on a few that kind of cover the generalities. There was a lot of commonality in the responses that was quite frankly a little eye-opening for us. It made it clear we need to do a better job of communicating what we do, how we do it, and things like that. It's something I want to try. So planned route and camp support will be helpful. We definitely do those things. Not every ride with the camp support, but we do occasionally offer supported rides and semi-supported rides and things like that. Planned routes. We have over 1,700 routes in our Spinistry routes library, and we can fashion custom routes based on almost any requirement. The next one, provide routes and points of interest with GPX download for solo and events around the big state of Texas. So there is a social element to it. Hey, that's right up our alley of what we do already. If that's not clearly obvious to everyone, we need to do a better job of sharing that. Share routes, camping spots, gear. Routes and camping spots are a big part of what we do. We do have a stock of bike packing bags, gear, and assorted odds and ends. If you're a little bit short on your pack out, we can possibly make arrangements to get some to you. We do organized routes and stops. And when it's 100% unsupported, we definitely let you know. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, don't just assume that an event, just because maybe we did one event that worked one way, don't assume the next event works that same way. Read the details. You'll be shocked how many people will send out an email notice, say, hey, check out this event we're doing, with a link to the event page, and all the important details are right there in the first paragraph. And the number of people that just send a reply, well, what time does it start? Where is it? What day is it? That's all right there on that link. Please digest that information. If it's not clear on the page or we don't do a good job of explaining it, we'll address that. If you say, hey, I looked for this on the page, didn't see it. Oh, okay. Maybe I forgot to put that in there, or maybe it needs to be better organized. Would love to join some organized trips to try new routes and meet new people. And yes, we do that already. Now, what I'll be doing going forward is we had 64 people that gave these individual open question responses, and there was a lot of good information, a tremendous amount of fantastic feedback. And we're going to actually use those responses to help drive this content going forward. Other videos, trainings, build events around some of the feedback. So thank you for getting that information back to us. Thanks for joining us.